All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're looking at a concept from managerial economics today that honestly governs pretty much every business, project, and production line out there, whether we actively realize it or not. We're unpacking a theory that has massive, real-world implications for how we manage our time, our resources, and our teams. In the modern workplace, our default reaction to a problem is almost always just to throw more at it, right? More budget, more software, more meetings, definitely more people. But as we're gonna see, that exact instinct is often what completely breaks the system.
So, have you ever wondered why adding more workers to a project that's already late almost always slows it down even more? I mean, we've all been there. A deadline is looming, the client is breathing down your neck, and management's panicked reaction is to just throw more people at the problem. Get more hands on deck, right? That becomes the rallying cry. But then, almost magically, progress just grinds to an agonizing halt. It actually takes longer to finish. It's that deeply frustrating everyday productivity paradox, the classic too many cooks in the kitchen feeling. We kind of just assume that if one person can do a job in 10 hours, 10 people can effortlessly knock it out in 1 hour. We view complex workflows like simple math equations, but people aren't interchangeable cogs. Integrating new folks means onboarding, answering a million questions, and untangling crossed wires.
More input does not equal more output. This highlights a deeply ingrained fallacy we all share, the idea that scaling is always linear. We desperately want to believe that effort and resources will directly and forever correlate with results. It feels logical, doesn't it? If I shovel more coal into the engine, the train goes faster. If I hire 5 more developers, those new software features are going to ship sooner. But that linear logic fundamentally breaks down in the real world. At a certain point, the whole relationship fractures. The extra coal literally suffocates the fire, and those extra developers spend their entire day in alignment meetings instead of writing code. Today, we're unpacking exactly why that happens, the hidden friction it creates, and most importantly, how you can actually spot this dangerous tipping point before it completely ruins your workflow.
And that brings us to the law of diminishing returns. It's a counterintuitive economic principle explaining why continually adding more input, like workers, time, or raw materials, to a limited setup eventually yields smaller and smaller increases in output. Now pay attention to an absolutely crucial phrase there, limited setup. That right there is the secret ingredient to understanding this whole dynamic. The workspace, the tools, the digital bandwidth, the management capacity, something in the equation is fixed. It cannot be easily expanded. You're working with a finite container. When you force more and more input into that rigid, unchanging setup, well, the magic starts to fade. The system just can't absorb the new resources effectively, and the sheer friction of managing that surplus starts eating away at your actual productive time.
Let's break this down into 3 stages, starting with number 1. Initial input increases output. Think about how a project naturally evolves as it grows. In this first stage, the honeymoon phase, you bring on those first few team members, and productivity absolutely skyrockets. They divide the labor, specialize in their tasks, and things run incredibly smoothly. Every new person is a massive value add. But eventually, you hit stage 2. The workspace becomes limited. You're still adding people, but the environment is getting incredibly tight. Team members start bumping elbows, waiting around for access to shared tools, or just talking over each other in endless email threads. Finally, you inevitably crash into stage 3, where returns begin to diminish. The extra output you get from that newest worker is noticeably less than the massive boost you got from the very first one. The system is visibly choking on its own capacity.
The real-world scenario, a McDonald's kitchen. To really see this dynamic in action, let's step away from the abstract for a second. Picture a fast food kitchen. It is an absolute marvel of modern efficiency, designed down to the exact square inch to maximize throughput. The fryers, the grills, the assembly stations, the drive-through window, everything is perfectly positioned within a very specific, limited workspace. This isn't some infinite, sprawling factory floor. It's a highly constrained physical box where high-speed synchronized production has to happen flawlessly. And because it operates on such incredibly tight margins of space and time, it's the absolute perfect testing ground for seeing just how quickly extra resources can morph from an asset into a total liability. Think about what happens when you add your initial workers into that kitchen environment. The workspace condition is perfectly adequate. One person is on the grill, one's managing the fries, someone else is taking orders at the register. The output impact? Consistently faster production. Everyone has the physical space and the specific tools they need to stay in their lane and execute. But imagine a well-meaning manager panicking during the noon lunch rush. They pull 5 extra off-shift employees into the back to help out. That is overstaffing.
The workspace instantly transforms from adequate to severely limited. Now workers are physically blocking each other from reaching the fry baskets, they're slipping, constantly apologizing, literally standing around waiting for their turn to use a single spatula. The team is now so crowded that the overall production speed actually plummets. It slows the whole team down. The burgers are coming out slower than when they had fewer people.
When you shift from optimal staffing to overstaffing in a limited workspace, chaos completely takes over. Everyone goes from being in this perfect rhythm, a real state of flow, to constantly navigating physical and communication roadblocks. And I really want to emphasize a crucial point here. The primary culprit behind this severe loss of productivity, it's not lazy workers, it's not a lack of skill, and it is certainly not a lack of motivation. The physical limitation of the workspace itself dictates the failure. You simply cannot cheat the geometry of the room. When the fixed resources, the square footage, the number of grills, are totally maxed out, adding variable resources like human beings stops being a solution. It actually becomes a fundamental managerial mistake.
And this leads to a pretty dramatic climax, where total output actively begins to fall. Let's trace the journey. Worker 1 comes in, fires up the grill, and starts producing a moderate output. It's a solid start. Then Worker 2 joins the line. They perfectly complement the first worker, taking over the assembly and wrapping, and together they hit absolute peak output. The system is humming perfectly. But then, operating under that false linear logic we talked about earlier, management adds Worker 3, hoping for an even higher surge in numbers. Instead, they get lower output. The third worker is just taking up critical floor space, causing those first 2 highly efficient workers to stop, maneuver around them, and completely break their rhythm. The total number of burgers successfully produced in that hour actively drops.
Negative marginal returns. So overstaffing doesn't just result in a frustrating plateau of your progress. It actively creates what economists call negative marginal returns. The additional return from that newest third worker isn't just zero. It's not simply that they're standing in the corner doing nothing while the rest of the team works. Their impact is actually negative. By merely existing in that crowded space, trying their hardest to find a way to be helpful, they are actively disrupting and destroying the productivity of the previously efficient workers. Their presence is a net negative to the entire system. You are essentially paying resources to slow your own operation down. Crazy, right?
It all boils down to this fundamental reality. Adding more workers to a limited workspace will eventually lead to negative marginal returns. That is the signature textbook summary, and it serves as a stark, unforgiving warning to managers and team leaders everywhere. You have to ruthlessly identify what your specific limited workspace actually is. Sure, it might be physical square footage like our fast food kitchen, but in the modern knowledge-based world, it might be something digital or structural. Your limited workspace might be a single critical shared document that 50 people are trying to edit simultaneously. It might be a super fragile software architecture, or honestly, it might simply be a single manager who demands to approve every minor decision, but absolutely does not have the hours in the day to do so.
So, knowing the law of diminishing returns, where might you be overstaffing your own limited workspaces? We've covered a lot of crucial ground today, and I want to leave you with this final thought to apply directly to your own professional world. Where are you unknowingly, aggressively forcing more input into a system that physically, digitally, or structurally just cannot handle it? Take a step back this week. Look really closely at the frustrating bottlenecks in your own projects and ask yourself a hard question. Do we really need more hands on deck, or do we just need a bigger kitchen? Thank you for walking through this explainer with me. I really hope this deep dive into managerial economics equips you with a sharper perspective on how to design workflows, remove friction, and truly work smarter.